The number of Americans living with a partner outside of marriage is on the rise, but a new Pew Research Center survey finds that married adults are more satisfied with their relationship and more trusting of their partners than couples that are living together. Specifically, Pew found that married couples are more likely than unmarried couples to say they trust their spouse or partner a great deal, to be faithful to them, act in their best interest, and tell them the truth. It also found married couples are also more likely to be satisfied with their spouse's parenting, dividing household chores, and with communication. Joining us now with a response to this is sociologist Brad Wilcox, who directs the National Marriage Project at the University of Virginia. Dr. Wilcox, thanks for joining us.
It's good to be here, Heather.
Talk about how significant is this Pew survey when you look at the overall body of research on marriage and cohabitation and what we know at this point?
Yeah, I think a lot of Americans think that cohabitation is no big deal or it's even a good idea. But the research tells us that for adults, they're more likely to be flourishing when they're married compared to cohabiting. And for kids, there's just no question that marriage is much more stable for kids in America than is cohabitation.
And when you look at this survey, is it telling you anything that you didn't know before, anything that stands out, or is it more affirming the research that you've already been seeing on this subject?
Well, I think what's striking about this particular survey is it tells us that many Americans really think it's a good idea to cohabit either before you're thinking about marriage or, in sort of a substitute for marriage. And again, the research says that's not true. And it's particularly the case that cohabitation and kids don't mix in the research.
Well, it's interesting because when it comes to parenting, this particular survey found that the majority of Americans think that cohabiting couples raise children as well as married couples do. What do we know about the difference?
Well, the difference is really twofold. One, there's a lot more instability in cohabiting families than married families. They're about twice as likely to break up compared to married families. So kids are much more likely to experience instability in single parenthood if their parents are cohabiting at birth, for instance, compared to being married. The second thing that's really, I think, sort of cause for concern here is that when people are cohabiting with unrelated adults in the household, typically mom and mom's boyfriend, there's a much higher level of physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse in terms of the risk likelihood. So cohabitation really doesn't give kids the kind of stability and the context of commitment that they need to have both, a better family life and even a safe family life.
From your vantage point, do you think the general public understands some of these benefits of marriage, or do you think people more see cohabitation as just, a good step on the way to marriage? What are people understanding?
Well, I think that the public is sort of divided on this question. There's a certain kind of ambivalence because on the one hand, I think people sort of say, kind of the same thing, marriage is just a piece of paper. When you kind of think about how people act in real life, what we see is that actually people are more likely to sort of challenge their friends when it comes to fidelity, for instance, if friends are married versus cohabiting. We know that parents are more likely to support their adult kids when they're married versus when they are cohabiting. So I think there's a bit of confusion that on the one hand, people say kind of in theory they're the same thing, but when it comes to kind of the reality of family life, reality of being a friend of someone who's either married or cohabiting, we do treat marriage differently.
Well, it's really interesting to see the research coming out on all this. So, Dr. Brad Wilcox, thanks for your time and insights.